Gus T Renegade in for another program, The Cows, hopefully to share constructive information on racism, what it is, and how it works. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the broadcast. I hope it is a constructive investment of your time and energy. Let's see, today should have a very interesting program. Looking forward to the broadcast. Been looking forward to it for some time, actually. Should be very interesting, and looking forward to having our guest speak with us. See, I think I'm going to actually take a quick commercial break at the beginning of the program. Quick 90 seconds, get myself a glass of water so I can be relaxed and ready to roll for the broadcast. Quick commercial, and we'll be right back. Cows, Gus T Renegade. Thank you. We'll be right back. All righty. We're back in. I got disconnected momentarily, but we should be ready to roll. Sorry about the disruption. At any rate, again, the Cows, Gus T Renegade, in for another broadcast. Our guest for today's program was recommended by the person who wrote the song that we kicked off the broadcast with. Mr. Lloyd Marcus. I actually have his book posted with the program. If you look to the right, if you're listening at Blog Talk Radio, you will see Mr. Marcus's book right there. I was actually seeking to get him on the program, and he was a little hesitant. I don't know. He thought, I guess he thought we were going to be angry with him or yelling at him, and I kept telling him that that was not the case. Just interested in hearing more about his organization and his work. I'd even be down to have a live song. But Mr. Marcus, he wrote me back, and he said that he would enjoy it if I could get today's guest on the program. He gave me his contact information. I contacted. He was willing to come and chat with us. Our guest for today's program has an extensive resume. I could probably take up a good half of the program reading out his list of accomplishments and awards. It is very impressive. I'll just try and cut to the chase as much as possible and hit some of the major highlights. He graduated top of his class at the U.S. Naval Flight School, member of the National Honor Society. I mean, it's rather impressive. Very lengthy resume. He can share some more of his numerous accomplishments during the broadcast. In addition to everything else that he has accomplished, he is the current national director for the National Association for the Advancement of Conservative People of All Colors. Real privilege to have him on the broadcast with us this evening. Our guest, Mr. Frantz Kebreau. Mr. Kebreau, are you with us?
I am. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your time with us, sir.
My pleasure.
Groovy. As I told the listeners, I'm looking at your bio right now, and man, I would get worn out trying to read the whole thing. Would you like to share with our audience a little bit more about yourself, and just so they have a better understanding of who you are?
Sure. My parents are from Haiti. They came over here back in 1964, and my grandfather was the president of Haiti back in 1957. He took the country over in a coup. True story. Took the country over in a coup, and then later that year in November, Papa Doc was elected, and then my grandfather became the ambassador to the Vatican. He wasn't well liked by Papa Doc. They tried to assassinate him a few times, and then he unfortunately passed away in '62. And then my parents were here in '64. I attended the University of Maryland. That's where I got my undergraduate degree in politics and government and politics. And then I joined a Navy flight school and became an officer. I was in the Navy from 1990 till 2000, flying a little over 300 carrier landings on that aircraft and on the Independence, about a little over 100 of those at night. And curiously, I don't know if most people know this, but the United States Navy is the only military force in the world that actually lands on carriers at night. There's no other world that does that. And then I joined since 2000 until presently, and then last year, or actually December of this year, Walt Metzer had asked me to take as the national director of the organization and take the direction that I wanted to take. And then that's our mission today is as you see on the website, is ending identity politics, and that's where we are today.
For the National Association for the Advancement of Conservative People of All Colors. Just by clicking the title, it will take you to their webpage. If you're not listening at Blog Talk Radio, the address is NAACPC.org. Again, NAACPC.org. And that's a long title, so for the rest of the program, I'll just be saying NAACPC, if that's okay with you, Mr. Kebreau.
That sounds great. That sounds great.
Oh, outstanding. I want to hop in and cover as much material as we can for the broadcast and get some calls and all that good stuff. I guess for folks, if they have not seen you, and you have a lot of videos online, you've been interviewed a ton, you are a black male, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. This program, the C.O.W.S., Context of White Supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded that we are in a global system of racism, white supremacy, and the definition that I use for both racism and white supremacy is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that definition is accurate?
That is pretty big and broad. I do not subscribe to that. But I deal more in, let's say, more local terms or more national terms rather than the global terms. My subject is more geared towards what's been happening here in the United States, North America, and in the United States of America. And so as far as globally that's concerned, that would be a different subject as far as I'm concerned as to whether or not that's happening. I would suspect that it is not. I've traveled the world many times over, and you would have to probably categorize the Chinese into the category of being white if you were going to go down that road. Because they're intricately involved in everything that goes on in the world at this point, and there's probably other countries that you have to look at that perspective. Now, I do see that there has been conspiracies, in my opinion, to hold certain countries back or to not aid certain countries, if you want to speak globally, and Haiti is an absolute example of that. But as far as categorizing the world as a world of white supremacy against everybody, the non-whites, I'm not ready to go there yet.
Okay, no problem. You're not the first guest who has disagreed with my view on that. No problem. I hope Mr. Lloyd Marcus, I hope he's listening, because I think he thought we would get upset and bite his head off if he didn't agree with us, and that's not how we roll here at all.
That's why he sent me out here. He sent me to get my head chopped off. That's how it is. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We don't do any head chopping here at the C.O.W.S. No head chopping at all. For our listeners who, let's say they've never been to the website, they've never heard of you, what exactly is the NAACPC all about? Well,
the NAACPC started with Lloyd Marcus and Walt Metzer in, I believe it was June of 2008. And they the direction of the organization at that time was to go into the communities and be the antithesis to the NAACP and to help the communities build themselves back up rather than relying on the government to do it for them. That was the original intent of the organization. When I took over in January as the national director, I had asked them that I wanted, before we can do those kinds of things, I wanted to basically change the message of the organization to ending identity politics. Because my feeling was that before you can actually build up communities, you have to end identity politics so that the communities aren't restricted by their own barriers. And so today's mission of the organization is to end identity politics. And what we try to do is we try to use awareness and lessons of history or lost lessons in history to help people understand that we weren't supposed to be a black and white nation, and literally, I think that's what it's come. That is what it's come down to. We don't talk about yellow people anymore. We don't talk about red people anymore. We only talk about black and white in the United States of America, and we try to teach that the purpose of the United States was, or North America and the United States was not supposed to be a black and white nation, but that evil forces or negative forces keep wanting it to be that way and keep wanting it to stay that way. And I agree with you that there has been in the past a white supremacy organizations that have pushed our society in a particular direction. The legacy of which is what we're living with today, and so our organization helps to educate people about what happened in the past, the truth about what happened in the past, what mostly they do not get in their history books. And how that has affected us today, and how we can come over those get over those barriers and become a one united nation, black and white and yellow and brown all together.
Interesting. One thing I try to do at the program to aid my listeners, I try to restate responses just to make sure that I understood correctly and make sure the listeners heard what you said. Your organization, at least under your leadership, the organization, the NAACPC, is working to inform people about the legacy of barriers that have kept people divided in this area of the world. You referenced the system of white supremacy, the legacy of racism, white supremacy in this area of the world, and working to overcome those obstacles so that we can all be together and not be restricted or mistreated on the basis of color. Is that accurate?
You are very good at what you do.
Okay. I do try. I make errors, but I do try. Okay. That's okay. Good start. You said awareness. Would it be accurate to say awareness of where how this legacy of racism, white supremacy got started in this area of the world, how it has been maintained, and what we need to do to work to overcome that? Is that the awareness that you all work to inform people of?
Absolutely. I considered the progressive's worst nightmare, especially that if you're going to talk about the progressives as far as white supremacy is concerned, because people have to understand, in my opinion, that if you want to combat white supremacy, you can't combat that with black supremacy. That only gives white supremacy more power because it's like a yin and yang. It just feeds off of it. The only way that white supremacy will no longer exist is if white doesn't exist anymore. But if white doesn't exist anymore, then black cannot exist anymore. And that's the direction that the country needs to go in my opinion. For you not to have white supremacy, then you can no longer have white as an issue in the United States of America. I am the worst enemy of the white supremacists. The favorite of the white supremacists will be the NAACP, will be other black-centric organizations, because that's what feeds their idiocy. That's what feeds that organization, is that they have that to feed off of. If they have nothing to feed off of, they don't exist anymore.
Very interesting. I want to get clarification from my listeners and myself about some of the terms, and then to go into more detail about some of what you just shared. Identity politics, that's big on your website. I think it's in bold letters if you go to NAACP NAACPC.org, you'll see identity politics all over the place. They are no fans of identity politics. I used to say identity politics.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
What do you mean when you say identity politics?
Very simply, it's the use of race against one group or another group. Like, for instance, the classic example was the NAACP coming out with their resolution last week, claiming that the Tea Partiers were racist. Now, they could have come out in a different fashion and said there are racist elements that exist in all of our society, and we condemn all racist elements in all of our society. But they pinpointed one organization, knowing full well that just coming out and saying there are racist elements in that one organization, that the organization would be painted as such. Now, what happens after that is the society starts mobilizing in fracturing directions. So one set of people say, wow, the Tea Partiers are racist. The other set of people say, why are you calling us racist? And we start dividing ourselves based on race once again, which was not necessary at the time. And then the purpose of which is so that when August comes around and November comes around, the issue of race is at the limelight, or is at the forefront as to who you're going to vote for. And that's what's been going on, in my opinion, the Democrat Party for quite a long period of time, is using that so that people of color vote a particular way so that they can point in what I call identity politics, the identity politics gun, so as you would have it, in a particular direction and say, those are the evil guys, those are the bad guys, vote in this direction. It's not about color. The issues that we're fighting for today, the issues that are important in our communities, in my opinion, has nothing to do with color. If you take color out of the equation, things can get solved. Issues can get solved.
Wow. I definitely want to go into more detail about the NAACP's resolution with regards to the Tea Party and them feeling that organization is racist, or the people involved with that protest are racist. But I did want to make sure with identity politics, we were clear that identity politics, when you say that, you mean people using race explicitly, directly, indirectly, to manipulate people with regards to how they're going to vote or how they're going to act. Is that
exactly? Yes. And one last thing, who they will align themselves with.
Okay. Wow. See, now that's why I ask, for folks listening in, that's why I ask at the beginning about system of white supremacy, because I've concluded that we are in a global system of white supremacy, and in my view, nobody works identity politics like the white people who believe in and practice racism, white supremacy. They have been doing it for, I don't even know how long. They've been doing it for many, many years, and they are excellent at mobilizing white people around the idea of worldwide white domination. Nobody holds a candle to them, but I could be incorrect. Did you have any thoughts on that, Mr. Kebreau?
Well, I don't know if you could be incorrect. You could also be partially correct. You could be correct in different sectors of our society. I personally think that it's very strange to me that 90 to 95% of people of color, of the black population, votes in one direction consistently and constantly. Is that because they want to, or is that because they've been convinced to? Now, you mentioned the idea of people that are white that are controlling things. Could it be that that's what's going on in the Democrat Party? Here, let me give you an example. I hardly think that the word minority was invented or created by an individual of color to ingratiate himself. That would not make any sense. But let me explain the word minority and why it works so well in the Democrat Party, and why I consider it's a terrible term to use to describe anybody whatsoever. Now, when I give my seminars, I usually use women as an example, but it goes for it goes for race as well, insofar as equality is concerned. Now, women considered to be minorities fight for equal pay for equal work, which makes sense. It shouldn't have anything to do with your gender. It should have everything to do with how you do your work, which makes sense. So when women fight for equal pay for equal work, do they fight for it because they're minorities, or do they fight for it because they consider themselves to be equal? Well, they fight for it, of course, because they consider themselves to be equal. Then why in our current paradigm do we still consider them to be minorities? Why do they consider themselves still to be minorities? And that's the trap that, in my opinion, the Democrat Party has them set in. They keep fighting each other, fighting themselves over the same issues, but they can't get past it because if you consider yourself to be a minority, you will never be equal.
Wow. Mark this one down, ladies and gentlemen listening in. Mr. Kebreau and I, we have agreement. This is at least one thing, total agreement on. I do not accurate, constructive term to use. Even if you're talking about racism, I do not think that non-white people should reference themselves as minorities. I'm in total agreement there with Mr. Kebreau. Wow, very interesting, very interesting. I do want to make sure we get back to the NAACP and their resolution, so don't let me forget that. But I also want to make sure that we got, that's important. That was big news.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
To get some of the other big items with regards to the agenda that the NAACPC has. You all state that you're working for a colorblind society. What do you mean when you say a colorblind society?
Well, the premise is that, well, let's take a look at slavery time period. You know, as late, obviously, as late as the 1830s, 40s, 50s, and obviously 1860, let's say. If you were a Negro, you could very well have been a slave. Upwards of 90+%, let's say. That's an identity that was associated with being a slave, the color of your skin. And today, we still determine people's value, individuals' value, based on their skin color, and skin color alone. Let me give you an example. Affirmative action says that if you are a particular skin color, you get a few more points than somebody else. Now, how is that a detriment to the person that's getting a few more points, let's say, because of affirmative action? Well, if your value is based on something outside of yourself or outside of your God, then once that particular thing is taken away from you, your view of yourself automatically goes down. You see, value can never be associated with your skin color as described by somebody else, because then that's control over you as an individual. And that's what happened during the slavery times, and that's what's happening today, in my opinion, to Black America, is that we tie our identities so much to our skin color based on somebody else's interpretation of it and determination of it. And so they can push and pull and tug at our value as much as they want because we give them that ability. We give them the freedom to do that. And that's why if you create a colorblind society, then your value is no longer tied to your skin color. It's tied to you, what you have inside of you. And therefore, nobody can control you. Nobody can push and pull and tug at you based on your skin color. That goes away.
I got disconnected. MacBook Pro. This will give me an excellent opportunity to again plug MacBook Pro so that I do not have these issues. Quite frustrating. At any rate, I believe we still have Mr. Kebreau. I just saw him on the line. Mr. Kebreau, if you get this, just ring us back, and I will get you up. There we go, right on. MacBook Pro. Mr. Kebreau, we have you. That was not your fault. Nothing incorrect happened on your end. I got disconnected. My apologies. Okay. I heard the response, most of it, but I did lose about the last minute or so of your response to the question, but I did hear the first portion of it. If for myself and listeners, if anyone got disoriented, if it's not asking too much, if you could maybe restate, if you could kind of make a concise restatement of your response, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Sure, absolutely. Now, I was referring specifically to being black in the United States of America and what is somewhat transferred over to the world. But let's say this to the United States, in that when we identify ourselves as being black, and not colorblind, but we identify ourselves as being black, we do that, in my opinion, to a certain extent, and I used affirmative action as an example. Affirmative action basically says that if you are a particular color, then you will get something for it. But the exchange of which is that you lose some of your freedoms. Because if you get something for being a particular color, that's a determination that somebody else makes upon you. Your value should not be based on what somebody else thinks of you. It should be based on what you think of yourself, and how your relationship between you and your God. But identity politics allows for, or not being colorblind, allows for control of you based on your skin color. And if I could go in a little further, a little deeper on it, and you've probably looked at many of these things also, but the North America didn't start out as a black and white continent, or a black, white, red continent. It may have started maybe as a mix of people coming here, and I would say probably within 100 years or so developed into a black, white, red continent. But before that, it was not, and it wasn't until 1691 that a law was written, the first anti-miscegenation law in the history of mankind, delineating between the color black and the color white, that they could not marry. Now, that law that was in the colony of Virginia was the first law in history to differentiate people between skin color, black and white, and that for some reason, or for a particular reason, I should say, they could not commingle, they could not get married. And from that time on, from 1691 all the way until 1967, anti-miscegenation or anti-interracial marriage was illegal, both in the colonies and also in the United States of America when we became such. That's 275 years of splitting colors of people apart. Today, we perpetuate that same model, and that model was begun by slaveholders to control their slaves. So, in essence, all we do today is perpetuate a model that was begun by the most evil people that you could think of.
Wow. Very interesting. I wanted to point out for some of our listeners, you should check out their website, NAACPC.org, because some of those slaveholders are on their website. George Washington is quoted, and Thomas Jefferson, I believe.
Yes.
I also wanted to note, you at the beginning, before I got disconnected, you talked about being allocated points based on your racial classification, that,
sure.
Because, or the way so-called affirmative action works, if you are a black person, you get, X amount of points through affirmative action programs. And my view, and I could be incorrect, my view, affirmative action is a system that is a form of compensation for the system of racism white supremacy. I think if you did not have racism, white supremacy, there would have never have been a need for an affirmative action program. Now, I could be incorrect on that, but I think this program, Context of White Supremacy, affirmative action is not identity politics, black people going out to mistreat other people who are not black. I think it was, and in my opinion, a very poor attempt at compensating victims of racism, white supremacy. Is there anything incorrect or illogical about what I said?
Not at all. Not at all. I agree with you. That was it was a form of compensation or redress, and I agree with you also that it was a very poor form. What is in my opinion, what would be the best form of a system of equality? That's the question that I often ask myself, and some people ask me, what would be the best form of a system of equality? And I tend, I'm an educated man, but I do understand that there have been millions upon millions of much more educated individuals, of which I tend to gather information to make my conclusion. One of them was Frederick Douglass. Now, today is quite a bit different than what it was 3 or 4 years after the ending of slavery, after 1865. But Frederick Douglass was asked at an abolitionist society, his question was, what should we do with the black man? Because they had not been educated for the most part since about the 1820s. They did not know how they would necessarily survive in society and how they would cope from being free after 200 plus years of bondage. So the question was, what should we do with the black man? Like I said, that was a different period than today. Today we have much more freedoms than they could ever have had back then. I mean, the historical black colleges just started being developed. The Republican Party had just started funding those colleges at that time. Now, his response, Frederick Douglass's response, was this. He said, do nothing with them. He said, if they're going to go to school, let them go to school. If they're going to go vote, let them go vote. If they're going to go to the store, let them go to the store. If they're going to go to church, let them go to the church. Do nothing with them. Leave them alone. He said these profound words, your doing with them causes them a positive injury. What they require is to be mere citizens of this country. And that is complete and total equality. What happened, though, and I agree with you, is that the KKK and the white supremacists could not have it. They did not want blacks to be mere citizens, the newly freed slaves to be mere citizens. They required them to remain black. They required them to remain as minorities. And in doing such, they were able to discriminate against them. The difference being that if you are a mere citizen and there is no reference to the color of your skin, you are now an equal citizen in society. But if you allow yourself to be a particular color, or more importantly, if you allow somebody else to define you and define your value based on your color, then that's where racism and discrimination can enter in.
Again, our guest for today's program, Mr. Frantz Kebreau, National Director of the NAACPC. I guess my concluding remark to that would be that myself, other non-white people who are mistreated because they are not white, they do not allow racist white supremacists to define them as black or non-white. They are victims of racism. That's, in my view, that's how the system of white supremacy operates. I don't allow people to mistreat me because I'm not white. They do it in spite of my wishes that not happen. But again, I could be incorrect. I wanted you, if you could, to elaborate. This is directly on the website for the NAACPC. It says that you all are ready to combat the Al Sharptons, Jesse Jacksons, and the NAACP. I was just very interested about that. If we could go kind of one by one, if you could share with our listeners why you all feel the need to combat these folks and specifically what they are doing that is incorrect. If you could start us off with Al Sharpton, that would be great.
Sure. Al Sharpton made a statement after the Arizona law was passed that the SB 1070 was a racist law and that it was taking us back to the Jim Crow days, and that he was going to go down to Arizona and have either freedom rides or freedom marches or something like that. Now, I immediately printed out the law. I read it through it. I printed out the Jim Crow laws. I read through those, and I said to myself, he's inciting aggravation and animosity because the two laws don't have any, or the Jim Crow laws and the SB 1070 in Arizona are worlds apart. One law says, if you are black, you will drink out of this water fountain, and if you are white, you can go here. Jim Crow laws were very, very specific in delineating that if you were a particular color, then you could do the same things, but separately. That's what it basically says, and that's all over the South. The SB 1070, when I read through it, I didn't see any such delineation between colors of people based on their ethnicity or the color of their skin. So therein, he was already basically the people. For instance, I went and looked at the SB 1070. There are millions of people, millions upon millions of people that would never look at that law. But based on what Al Sharpton said, it's a Jim Crow law. And so they take him at his word. He's a leader, quote unquote, in our society. So they will take him at his word that the SB 1070 says in there that if you are brown and you cross the border, we have an opportunity to stop you and to check your papers. And that's not what the law says.
That's interesting. If what you just said is accurate, that or actually, let me make sure I got the question. What is Al Sharpton doing that is incorrect? Did you answer that? What exactly is he doing that's incorrect?
I just used an example as the SB 1070, the Arizona law, to incite division in our society, because he is one of our leaders. He does have a large mouthpiece, a large megaphone. So when he says these kinds of things that are patently untrue, there are millions of people that will take him at his word because they will not go research that information. He has a responsibility, in my opinion, if he's going to be a leader in our society, to say things that are true. He can disagree with the SB 1070, but he doesn't have to lie about it.
Okay. So in your opinion, he was not honest about the immigration law that passed in Arizona. Is that accurate?
Correct. And from my experience, there is a pattern of not being completely honest at the same time inciting racial division.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so in your view, he has a pattern of not speaking honestly, and he has a pattern of inciting racial division. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. And that's why I asked that first question, system of white supremacy. In my view, the people who are most responsible for racial divisions, quote unquote, would be the white people who believe in and practice racism, white supremacy. I suspect that they have a lot more power, and when I say power, I mean the ability to do things, to get things done, than Mr. Al Sharpton. I guess I would also say with that law in Arizona, and I could be incorrect on this, I think a lot of people besides Al Sharpton felt that law was racist. I've heard a lot of people complaining about that particular law, and I guess I would say that I feel we're in the refinement stage of racism, white supremacy, where racism can be practiced, although no one has said anything explicitly racist, and laws can be written in a manner where color is not explicitly referenced, although the end result ends up being racist, white supremacist in effect. Have you seen where that can happen and does happen?
I will never say that racism does not exist in our society. If you are going to be racist in our society, I agree with you that you cannot be outwardly racist, or else you would be ostracized from the entire society. But I've been around the world many, many times, and unless I am extremely blind or ignorant, I have never experienced the racism that you're talking about. And I will tell you that when I was on my ship as a Navy pilot, I spent 2 years on that ship as the only black Navy fixed-wing pilot for 2 years, during which time I was made the head instructor for the entire squadron of all white people. It was my sole responsibility to make sure that my pilots were up and ready to go out and fight wars, and also I was made the head instructor for 250 pilots, all white pilots, one of 6 head instructors, I should say, to train them on how to land on aircraft carriers. Color was not an issue at all for me.
You did note that you were the only black person. Is that correct?
That is because we, unfortunately, it's an issue of expectations. We, unfortunately, in our communities, in our black communities, don't give our kids that level of expectation for their lives. I remember I was doing a cross-country flight. No, this is a true story. This is a true story, and this is, let's say, 2002, 2001, 2002. Walking through the Atlanta airport as a United Airline pilot, I was getting handshakes as though I were the President of the United States, because people were looking at me saying, "My goodness, I've never seen a black pilot before." And they were so proud that I was a pilot, and I was a pilot of color. And to me, listen, we've had the Tuskegee Airmen since World War II. So there's a definite gap there in understanding that, listen, me being of color and being a pilot has nothing to do with each other. It's because I went and did it. It's a level of expectation that we do not give our children as to what they can accomplish in this society. That's where the ball is being dropped.
Wow. I guess my view would be, I think people, that level of surprise that the black people in Atlanta had when seeing you, it sounds similar to the reaction that a lot of people had when President Obama was elected, is because we have been in a system dominated by white supremacy so long that black people haven't been allowed to do a lot of those things, and in many cases are still. You said you were the only black person in your unit, but I could be incorrect. And I hope Mr. Lloyd Marcus, if you're listening, no heads chopped. We're not agreeing on anything, but we tend to be pretty cordial here at the Cows. I think you can ask Mr. Kebreau. He can give his own testimony if he thinks we were surly and ugly in the way we treated him today.
I did a little research on what you were talking, this particular subject about pilots of color, Navy pilots of color being carrier pilots. And the research was dated back to 1997. That's when the last time the Navy had done a really large report on it. And it basically came out as saying that one of the big reasons why we don't have as many pilots of color, especially flying in the Navy, is not because of their capabilities or abilities, it's because of the lack of applications. They're just not getting enough people to come in. Do you understand? Now, the ones that come in have the same dropout rate, in essentially the same dropout rate as most other people going through. It might be a slightly higher dropout rate, but everybody, we have a big dropout rate in the Navy to land on aircraft carriers. That's not strange, but it's from a lack of applications, not a lack of ability or capability.
Okay. Again, there's another one. We have total agreement on that. I don't think that black people or any non-white people have a lack of capability or abilities. In my view, just the system of white supremacy makes it very difficult for non-white people to do things in comparison to white people worldwide. But I could be incorrect. Jesse Jackson, he was also on your list. What exactly does Jesse Jackson do that is incorrect?
Jesse Jackson had a charge, in my opinion. His lot he was given was to take the country forward after Martin Luther King Jr. Was assassinated. He had the opportunity at that time to move the country, to shift the country in a direction where I agree with you, where white supremacy would just fade away from having been an issue in the United States of America, where people could come together, of all colors and of all races come together, and we could move forward now as one nation under God. The problem is that if you take a look at some of his writings or some of his words, in 1977, he was a pro-life individual. By 1984, running for the presidency for the Democrat Party, he became a pro-choice individual. And you can see the transition in him as a person as not necessarily wanting to unite people, but continually finding issues in our society to divide people. And his charge, in my opinion, from what Martin Luther King Jr. had left, was for him to find ways to unite people. Because you can't say, looking back at Martin Luther King Jr., that he was a divider. He made a lot of people upset, but he himself wasn't going out to divide our nation. He was there to unite our nation. But when Jesse Jackson moved forward in his national view of what things are supposed to be, he moved forward with a mission. Maybe I shouldn't say a mission, but with a cause to look for places in society to divide people, and that's why I oppose the things that he's doing.
Okay. I want to make sure incorrect. What is he doing that's incorrect specifically? Just want to make sure I'm clear.
Yeah, I mean, as far as specifically, I just think that not anything. I'm not going to pinpoint anything very specific as a particular issue. Okay. It's just that when he looks at certain situations, it's based on a division between blacks and whites rather than let's figure out a way to bring people together.
Okay. Okay. Now that's interesting. That togetherness concept, that comes up a lot in discussions of racism, white supremacy. I try to be very cautious about that because I am together with a lot of black people frequently. I'm even together with a lot of white people frequently, and in my view, I'm still mistreated because I'm not white, and we're still in a system of racism, white supremacy. So I'm not really clear when people say bringing people together or being divisive. Again, in my view, the people who are most divisive are the white people who practice white supremacy. They are far more divisive than anybody else in the universe. That's really interesting with regards to Martin Luther King, though, because I know a lot of people were very angry with what he was doing. Black people and white people were furious with what he was doing. I don't know if I would say he was someone that was a so-called unifier. That's I have to think about that.
Let me tell you one of the things that he said, which I thought was which I take to heart and I use. He said from one blood God made man to dwell upon the face of the earth. Let's be dissatisfied until the day when nobody shouts white power, when nobody shouts black power, but when everybody talks about God's power and human power. And every day I repeat that to myself because my job, my mission in life is to infect society with that understanding of how we're supposed to be. And we are marching, in my opinion, we are marching towards a conclusion when that is going to happen. And I'll tell you that the mission of our organization is very clear, and everybody knows what I look like. And I started a brand new Facebook page this past Monday. And today, a week later, we have 5,000 members saying that I do not care about the color of anybody's skin. I only care about the content of the character. I only want to know merit and achievements. And as a matter of fact, one of our first initiatives is going to be to make sure that the block that you have on applications or school applications, whatever, where it says race, is eliminated from our society.
What problem will be solved by eliminating that block?
that when you decide you're going to go for a job, nobody can look at your skin color and determine whether or not you should get that job. Do you understand what I mean? When it's time for you to go to a particular school, it's based on your performance at your previous school, not whether or not you're a particular skin color, white or black. And it forces our society to run it forces our society to move in the direction of merit and achievement and less about skin color. Because like I said, you have to understand, in my opinion, that there's a famous statement, the blacker you are, the whiter I am. Do you understand? Somebody said that to me, the blacker you are, the whiter I am.
Wow. I did my homework. Did your wife, who is a white female, did she make that statement to you?
She sure did, and she's a famous woman.
Former Miss Sweden, is that correct?
Exactly.
I do my homework. Mr. Lloyd Marcus, I hope you're listening. We try to be professional here. We have tech problems, but I do my homework, and I tend to be polite. You should come chat with us.
And you know
wow.
that Sweden had one of the worst white supremacist racial problems in the world back at the turn of the century. One of the worst. And today, when you go to Sweden, today, they have no problems whatsoever. They don't see color whatsoever in Sweden.
How many, what population-wise, what percentage of the population is black in Sweden?
I have no idea. There are about only 9 million people in Sweden, but I have no idea. But they have people they have a mix of different ethnicities in Sweden. But I don't know what the percentages are. And I would suspect it's not anywhere near ours, not near 12%.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking they probably don't have that many black people there, but I've never been, so I could be incorrect. That's interesting. I did want to back up with regards to the initiative that you were talking about from the brand new Facebook page. Already got 5,000 folks. I have concluded that people not identifying on those sort of forms, employment applications or applications for college, not having a box for racial classifications, I've concluded that that's not really going to solve any problems with regards to people being mistreated on the basis of skin color. I think there are a lot of studies already that people who have non-white sounding names get mistreated on job applications. I think there have been a ton of those sorts of studies. And I think I've even heard people where they do have a name that I guess sounds white, whatever that means, and then they actually show up where the person is seen. And then, of course, you can see, oh, this is a white person, this is a black person, this is, whatever, Asian person. I think you can have a pretty effective system of mistreatment based on skin color, even if you take that box away. Do you think that's possible?
It's possible that if somebody saw you, they could discriminate against. That is going to happen whether you have the box there or not. The purpose of taking out the box is so that we can move society in a direction where they start thinking that race is not an issue. If we don't start moving in a direction, we never will get there. And so the purpose is to start the society moving in that direction. I am on board with you as far as this. We understand that racism, discrimination, bigotry, white supremacy, KKK, whatever you want to call it, we understand that an evil exists in our society. Where we might differ is how we combat that. And I decided, in order to make sure that our society can be one united society against that kind of evil, whether it be from people that are people of color or whites, you can only do that if those colors aren't deemed to be important anymore. Once those colors aren't deemed to be important anymore, then they have no power.
I have to think about that. Just my initial response based on my research, my studies, my observation is that I don't think that will solve the problem of racism, white supremacy. I think white people are very good at practicing racism, white supremacy in ever increasingly refined methods where they don't need those boxes. they can mistreat people who are not white in a myriad of ways. But I could be incorrect. Did you want to comment?
What I was going to say is I agree with you. Like I said, that would be a step in the right direction. It would be taken. I think what you might be saying is, what is the magic pill to ending this? And I don't think that there is one. What I'm saying is that we can move our society in a direction where skin color no longer has any power over anybody. And then they will lose their power when that happens. So we have to start moving society. You're talking about the white supremacist, KKK, or people that want to use to be racist, that want to be racist. We can take that power away from them. We can bring more people, as I'm attempting to do, as I'm doing on a regular basis, bring more people to the side of understanding that skin color does not have any value, any intrinsic value whatsoever. Whether you are black or white, yellow or brown, it does not matter. It does not have any intrinsic value. You bring more people into our camp, and as you bring more people into our camp, you start moving society in that direction, and you can't help it. Eventually, the forces of society will outweigh the forces of what you might be talking about, if that really does exist, as far as the white supremacy, the global white supremacy. They will not be able to, society will be able to change that if that really does exist. And like I said, I'm not sure if it does.
It might not. I could be incorrect. It might not. I might, be in a totally different universe. Somebody said that on the program, so I could be incorrect. I guess let me make sure I plug the website again. Our guest, the National Director of the National Association for the Advancement of Conservative People of All Colors, Mr. Frantz Kebreau. The website, NAACPC.org. Definitely got to make sure. NAACP, you said that on the website, rather, it says that you all are in opposition to them as well. What is the NAACP doing that is incorrect?
Well, it goes back to when they first started in 1909, and the amount of work that the NAACP was able to do with our society is absolutely tremendous. All the way through Brown versus Board of Education, they were the drivers of society, in my opinion, to help change the direction of the United States of America. But what was their charge? What was their responsibility? In my opinion, their responsibility was to figure out how to develop, how to change our society here in the United States to the point where the NAACP would become obsolete. It would not be necessary anymore. And what has happened, in my opinion, is that when society started moving past the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and they started doing things that started addressing things that should have been addressed 100 years earlier, the NAACP should have been full force, in my opinion, to help bring people together. But it transitioned into an organization where it decided to perpetuate its own mission, its own message of there's still a lot of things wrong in our society. They never got past 1964 or 1950. They're still stuck in that day now. Instead of bringing people together, they're still trying, today, the same things that they said back then, what they're saying today ends up dividing people. And that's what I have a problem with, is that they never transitioned into an organization to bring people together and then eventually become obsolete. And I tell people, the NAACPC, this organization, that is what my intention is that I do not want to be necessary. I want to be obsolete. We will reach a time in our history, and hopefully it's going to be while I'm still here, that society has decided that race is no longer an issue that we need to think about. And at that point, the NAACPC and I will pack up our toys and we'll go home.
Wow. I want to make sure I'm clear for my listeners and myself. NAACP, thing that they did and or are doing that is incorrect is that they have not transitioned from 1964, 1965 into working more to bring people together and working so that they are obsolete. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. I mean, they had an unbelievable amount to deal with, obviously through the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But once that 1964 Civil Rights Act came down, 65 Voting Rights Act, and the 68 Fair Housing, once those things came about, then they, in my opinion, they should have decided, okay, this is our opportunity now. This is it now. We can bring our society together. We've been separated. We've been divided for the last 200-plus years, even before this country was a nation. We've been divided. Now this is our opportunity. Let's bring everybody together. Because, like I said, and I've said this before, you will never have true equality in this society unless black and white don't exist anymore. Because the inequalities that exist in our society derive itself specifically from being black and white.
I'm in, you can write down another one. I'm in total agreement there. All of the problems with regards to mistreatment, and you said inequality, I'll just say injustice, mistreatment, is about race. People being mistreated because they are not white. And if you did not have race anymore, a lot of these problems would go away. I think things would be much better if you did not have race, racism, white supremacy. Wholeheartedly.
Exactly. Agree. Exactly. I'll tell you a story that, if you don't mind, I'll tell you a quick story. I was giving a seminar down in southern Florida, and to a Republican club down there, and a gentleman came to me after the seminar, and he was a gentleman of color. He said, in his Jamaican accent, "I want to tell you a story." I said, "Oh, okay, great." He's from Jamaica. He said, "I came here in 1964 to attend the University of Maryland, and I was filling out the application with at the university with my friend next to me. And as I was filling out the application, I came down to this section, this block that said race." He said, "I looked over at my friend next to me and I said, 'Hey, what is this thing called race? What is this? What are they talking about?' Because he had no idea, coming from Jamaica, that there was any issue or there was a delineation in the world that had to do with race. And this guy is from Jamaica. And that's why I say I go all the way back to the 1691 law that was passed here, that the first anti-interracial marriage law, because that law did not go into the West Indies. It didn't go into the Caribbean. It didn't go into South America, and it didn't even transfer. It was a British law in North America, in the colonies. It didn't go into England. It didn't even transfer into England. It only stayed here in North America, and that law became stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, and making the color line thicker and thicker and thicker, to the point that if you were white, it was disgusting for you to be married to somebody who was black. That's how they perpetuated that model that a person of color can have absolute less dignity than the person that's white. Now, if you take that away, if you take that model away, that was started here in the colonies and perpetuated in the United States of America, if you take that color line away, then it has no more power.
Just in the interest of accuracy and correctness, that is not accurate according to my studies. They had anti-miscegenation, white people who practice white supremacy, have established anti-miscegenation laws in other areas of the world. They had those in France. They're called, they were called the Code Noir, Black Code. They had those in South Africa. They had those in a lot of places where,
sure.
As I said, global.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But the Code Noirs did not come in until later on in the French time frame, and the South Africans didn't adopt theirs until the early 1900s. But I'm talking about in 1690, for almost 100+ years, it was here that we started this in the colonies.
Not we. I didn't.
I know what you mean. Yes, exactly.
Racism, yes. White supremacy started that, and I guess that really goes to the heart of where we disagree here on the website. Where it says, you all are in opposition to Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, the NAACP. In my view, the people who are most to blame for this divisiveness and people not being together, it's white people. It's not these folks. These folks, in my view, don't really have that much power in comparison to white people. These folks, to my knowledge, these folks don't get to pass any laws. They don't really have much power in regards to doing anything other than talking a lot. Al Sharpton, I think, is only known for talking. Jesse Jackson, talking. NAACP, talking. These folks, unless I'm wrong, if I'm incorrect, please set me straight. But I think these folks, it would be most accurate to say, all of these folks are responding to the system of racism, white supremacy. If you did not have a system in place designed, engineered to mistreat people who are not white, you wouldn't have an Al Sharpton, a Jesse Jackson, an NAACP. All of these folks would be obsolete if you didn't have white people practicing white supremacy.
Right, and I agree with you, because the progenitors of racism are the white supremacists. The progenitors of this racial divide were the white slave owners. I will never disagree with you there. What I am trying to get at, and if you ever listen to my seminar, I spend quite a bit of time letting people understand where this came from, why it started, and I am in agreement with you. Where we differ is what we do after this. Do we continue to give them the power to control us, or do we figure out a way to take that power away from our society? Now, I personally think that we've moved further than maybe you might. I personally think we've moved further in society, and that's obviously from my own experiences. And so, to me, it's more so we've come to a time when that is not as important. White supremacy and the racism and those kinds of things are not as important in our society as is bringing people together, both blacks and whites, to understand that it doesn't have to exist. It doesn't have to be that way. For the most part, in my opinion, it isn't that way. It's that we continue to hold ourselves back and keep that alive in our system.
When you say together, bringing ourselves together, I want clarification from myself and the audience. What exactly do you mean? Do you mean like living next door to one another, working in the same office? What exactly do you mean when you say that?
Well, I mean that when you say bringing people together, referring to what I'm saying, I think you're wondering whether or not we should all mix. I'm saying that it doesn't matter whether we mix or not. I would like it for it to be that way, but we should not mix. We shouldn't decide not to mix because of skin color. And that's partially what we end up doing.
Okay. Well, I don't use that term, so I don't really have a definition attached to it. So I'm just trying to get clarity for myself. So when you say that term, what do you mean, bringing us together?
Like, for instance, what we're doing this week is bringing people into the understanding that we don't have to be a nation divided by races, by different groups of people. Let me give you an example of what I say in one of my seminars. You know, there's two ways to bring about socialism in the United States of America. There's the class struggle, class envy. Doesn't really work all that well, because if you can be poor today and you can come up with a great invention tomorrow, and all of a sudden you're baking cookies, and you've got cookies going on around the world, and all of a sudden you're a millionaire. You could be, MC Hammer. All of a sudden you're a millionaire. I mean, that's what happens here in the United States of America. So it's difficult to tell people that, if you're a particular class, you can't get anywhere, because if you really wanted to, if you really tried, or if you wanted to seek the education, you could still do it. The possibilities are there. Whereas other countries, the possibilities, most other countries, I mean, they just do. In other words, if you're in Cuba and you wanted to be rich in Cuba, it's impossible. You're not going to get there. It just doesn't exist. But at least here, the possibility does exist. The second way is by continuing this racial divide. In the 1950s, 40s and 50s, the Progressive Party and the Communist Party were not strong parties. But they needed a place to go. And the first place they decided to go to was into the Democrat Party. And one of their tenets was to make sure that they exacerbated the racial divide in the United States of America. Now, why would they want to make that worse in the United States of America? Well, because the purpose of exacerbating the racial divide is to make sure that you create victims, which is a necessity for socialism. You create the victimhood. Once you create the victimhood, then you demand a redress from the government in the form of entitlements. There's nothing in there about equality. That's all about dividing people based on their ethnicity or their skin color. And then once you can promote that aspect of society and perpetuate it long enough and hard enough, then eventually you have a government that all it's doing is giving, which ends up becoming take from the rich, give to the poor, and then you have socialism. But there's nothing in there about human dignity. There's nothing in there about equality. There's nothing in there about self-worth, about self-esteem. There's nothing in there about that. It's all about controlling people. And so, basically what I'm trying to say is that if you understand really what's been going on since about the 50s, really pushed into the 60s, and now slowly progressing into where we are today, we have people in the United States that depend on the government for their subsistence. How can that be in the United States of America, where you can do anything that you want? In my opinion, anything that you want. Listen, like I said, my parents came from Haiti. My grandfather was almost assassinated, I think, 3 different times. They came here with basically nothing, and I started growing up, and all of a sudden I did not, and I ended up becoming a Navy pilot. Now, in a difficult system, that doesn't necessarily happen, but it happened to me. And people ask me, how could that happen? How could you do that? How could you accomplish that? And I tell them, I don't know. I just did it. I went through the steps. I went through the wickets. I took the test. I always wanted to get 100 on all of my tests. I always wanted to be the number 1 person in my class, and I just continued to. And that was my mindset. The mindset is that I had the expectation that was going to happen. But if you run in a system where they tell you you're a victim, you never have that expectation that you're going to get there, get what you really want out of society.
Again, our guest for today's program, Mr. Frantz Kebreau. We have a full switchboard. I want to make sure I give folks who called in an opportunity. Is that all right? If that's okay with you?
No, that's fine. No, that's fine.
Okay. Going to go right down the board here. This should, because you might have supporters who called in, so they might be mad at me. Person who called in, last 4 digits, 5594. You have a hand up. 5594. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'm calling from St. Louis. My name is Craig.
Greetings, Craig. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, no problem. My question to the guest on the website, it's a statement. I want to know, what do you mean when you say we need to maintain the soul of America? Can you define soul?
Yeah, absolutely. When Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, he wrote in there, obviously, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What most people, and the Declaration of Independence is a grievance document. It basically it's complaining to the king, to King George, of what they have done wrong and what he's done wrong, and why they are deciding they want to become independent. What people don't know and what people don't teach is that there was a lost grievance that's never been taught, that we don't teach in school, that Thomas Jefferson wrote. And in this lost grievance, he explains how the king has waged cruel war on a people that he did not have to do. He's basically saying, one of his grievances was that the king had brought slavery to the colonies, and that they were against this practice of slavery. And if that grievance had made it into the Declaration of Independence, then slavery would have been ended in the United States as it formed itself. But they don't teach that in school, and there's a reason they don't teach it, because they don't want people like us, people of color, to want to know that Thomas Jefferson wanted to end slavery at the birth of this country, at the birth of this nation. What happened is because we have 13 colonies, 11 of the colonies voted in favor to end slavery in 1776. The two that did not were Georgia and South Carolina. But the grievances needed to be unanimous, so it did not make it into the Declaration of Independence. As soon as it did not make it into the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson went directly to Virginia Council and tried to get the exact same thing passed in Virginia. And if many people don't know, but many people don't understand, that in Virginia you could not release your slaves. It was illegal to release your slaves. As soon as you let them go, somebody else could pick them up. So many people say Thomas Jefferson had slaves. Well, he could not really. He petitioned the Virginia Council on numerous occasions to be able to release his slaves, and they would not let him do so. And the same happened with George Washington. He ended up releasing his slaves, obviously, in his will when he died. But that is the birth of America. The birth of America was based on freedom. And our founding fathers understood that you cannot have a country that's birthed of freedom that's still a slave state. So they searched for ways in order to end slavery. And I'll tell you another one. The Ordinance of 1784, and this is even before that we had our Constitution, which didn't come about until 1787. The Ordinance of 1784, once again written by Thomas Jefferson, made slavery illegal in any new territory added to the United States. And at the time, it was only in those southern states. So anything that would come in after 1784 had to be free states. And they knew this. They knew that they could not have a country that was based on freedom where slavery still existed. When the vote count came down in the 13 colonies for that measure, for the Ordinance of 1784 with the anti-slavery language in it, the vote was they needed there were 13 colonies, and they needed 7 states to pass the measure. 6 states voted in favor. Only 3 states voted against this anti-slavery bill. 2 of the states were absent. 1 state split their vote, and the last state that was the deciding vote was the state of New Jersey. They had 2 delegates. The first delegate voted in favor to end slavery to make sure that it did not grow anymore in the United States. The second delegate was a delegate by the name of John Beatty from the state of New Jersey. John Beatty was an anti-slavery delegate. But the problem is that when the vote was cast, he was deathly ill in bed, and they stuck so close to the rules that they didn't take his vote. So it failed by 1 vote. They were still trying to get rid of it, and it failed by 1 vote. And many people don't understand that Article 1, Section 9 of our Constitution ends the slave trade by January 1st, 1808. And for many, many, many years after January 1st, 1808, the New Year's Day was celebrated by people of color, by black people, because of the Article 1, Section 9. And today we forget all about that. And why is that? Because they don't teach it that way in school. They don't teach us to be proud of certain things at school. And it was in 1820, I believe, the Missouri Compromise came about, where Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, after the Missouri Compromise was passed, where you would trade a slave state for a free state, that they said, what are these people doing with our country? This was not the direction that the country was supposed to be going in. And unfortunately, pro-slavery forces took over after that time frame, and it wasn't until obviously 1865 or 1861 we were able to, unfortunately, have to go to war in order to end all the entire practice. So the soul of America that I'm talking about, is based on equality, that is described in the Declaration of Independence and the writings of our founding fathers as to why they wanted to get rid of slavery.
Excellent question. Thank you, 5594. Let's see. Person who called in with a blocked number. person who called with a block number. If you have a question for Mr.
Oh, that's not good.
Is that me?
Yes, that is you. Thank
no,
you for
block
calling
number's
in.
not bad. No, block number's not bad. It's just a private thing, but it shows up on anybody's line that way. Thank you for being on the show. I don't have too many comments. I kind of feel like I'm in the twilight zone here, so I'm just listening for now. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling in. Appreciate it. Check the blog, ebonynewschannel.blogspot.com. Again, ebonynewschannel.blogspot.com. We have another block number, a person who called in from the other block number. Your line is open. Oops, I thought it was. Okay, yes. Person who called in from the other block number, your line is open.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well, sir.
Yeah, I agree with the guest that maybe so-called black people shouldn't be predictable in their voting as far as voting Democrat the way that they do. But it just seems like a little, like Gus said, the problem is the racist white supremacists, and it seems like a little antagonistic and a little disrespectful for your organization to be kind of mocking the NAACP, it just, I mean, for somebody that would want to, listen to what you have to say, do you think that could be something that could deter whatever your supposed mission is?
Well, maybe it could, but I'm not necessarily in the business of holding back how I feel to garner more support. I say it like it is, and it's important to tell the truth of how I feel. I think that if I did that, if I held back how I felt, and people wanted to support me because of false information or incomplete information, then I would be doing them a disservice. So I'm not in the business of doing that. But let me go back to the NAACP, because we wanted to talk about the resolution that they had passed, and these are the kinds of things that set me off. I've been to countless upon countless tea parties as keynote speaker, as commentator. I mean, you name it. I've been to countless tea parties. I was invited down to Arizona to speak at a Tea Party rally and also to give my seminar down there. I'm on my way to Oregon to speak to a Tea Party and also to give my seminar over there. I'm on my way to Philadelphia, to Washington, D.C., I'm going all over the country to speak. And I was asked on Fox News, what is the reception that you get when you speak at these tea parties? And I said, the reception is amazing. Now, you understand my message. My message is to end identity politics, to bring about a colorblind society so that we don't have groups of people anymore. We just have Americans. And at the end of my speeches, end of my presentations, before and after, but at the end of my presentations, I typically spend approximately 45 minutes to an hour shaking hands, getting hugs from old ladies, and getting hugs also from old men. But the ones that affect me the most are the World War II veterans who come up and say, I don't know what is going on in our country. And some of these guys come with tears in their eyes and say, I have never been racist in my life. I don't know what these guys are talking about. And I'm so happy that you're able to get this message out. Because for me, it's never been about race. It's been about the soul of the individual, the character of the individual. And it turns out that I must admit to you that there is a large, I mean a massive, an overwhelming section of this population that couldn't care less about the color of your skin. They don't care. Therein lies the problem. If I can expand a little bit, therein lies the problem. You see, the civil rights movement was specifically about making sure that you were not discriminated against because of the color of your skin. And the leaders of the civil rights movement understood that if we were going to reach a level in this society where the color of your skin was not going to be a point by which somebody could discriminate against you, then that is the thing that has to go away. The thing that they use against you must go away, i.e. your skin color or the value therein must go away. Today in our society, I call it the new racism. Today in our society, if I look at somebody of color and I don't acknowledge their quote-unquote blackness, then I am called a racist, which is exactly what was done before pre-1964, is people looked at somebody, acknowledged their blackness, and discriminated against them for it. But today, it's a new type of racism. If I do not acknowledge your blackness, then I am the new racist. And it's a flip, it's a perversion of what the civil rights leaders actually wanted.
If I can ask a quick question, the phone line is just exploded here. If I can ask a quick question before I get to the other line. When you go to the Tea Party functions, are most of the people who are at these events white people?
Admittedly so, yes.
Okay, that's what I suspected. Now, let
me ask you. Can I ask you a question though? Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
The question has been, but then there are mostly white people at these Tea Party events, and people have asked me, why is that? Even people in the audience say, where are they? We don't care about their skin color. Why aren't they here? And I tell them, they are not here because they live on what I call the liberal plantation. In our liberal plantation, they are taught, like I was taught when I was a liberal Democrat 7 years ago, that everybody who is white either is currently or has the potential of being a racist. And that's why most people of color will not come here, because it's against their nature. It's against what they're taught as they're growing up, is that white people are racist. I come because I realized over time that is hogwash. So when I come into their midst, they say to themselves, thank goodness you got it. You understand that it's not about your skin color. We could care less. We couldn't care less, in other words. So that's the answer to that question.
Did you have a question for me, or did you just want to make that comment?
I was going to get a question out, but I ended up making a comment instead.
No problem. Non-Mighty Wick, if you have a question, your line is open, sir.
Beard?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, wow, it's been all over the place, kind of interesting to listen to. I'm sorry, pronounce your name for me again, Guess?
It's Frantz. Frantz,
okay. Frantz, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it seems to be at least three particular people, non-white people that you mentioned that you take issue with, and you got specific about the things you take issue with them doing. It seems that, and I could be wrong, that white people are doing these things like at a much greater degree than these non-white people are that you take issue with, with the things they're doing. And that to me seems, odd to say the least, because you seem to have a lot of energy. You're real passionate about getting at these behaviors of people, but they're non-white, where you got white people doing them, and it's like, they doing them at a much greater rate. So yeah, that's one thing. And then I was just going to say, it seems like could be wrong about this too, that Sweden is on the job. So yeah, that's it.
I didn't hear the Sweden part.
That it seems as if Sweden is not the country itself, but I suppose the folks there are putting in overtime to maintain the system of white supremacy.
Oh, I didn't realize that. But okay, at least not when I go there. As far as the first part of your question, if you're still there, who is it that you're talking about as far as whites and racism? Who specifically, and maybe I can take a look at that.
I'm sorry?
Who is it that you're talking about specifically as far as whites and racism. You said you're doing it at a far greater degree. Who is it in our society? Who are those people in our society today that are dividing? And this is what I'm concerned with. That are continually dividing us based on our skin color.
As far as I can understand, I haven't seen where that practice has ever discontinued. So when you're speaking about non-white people, I guess responding to that practice, logic would suggest that they are, less powerful than the thing that they are responding to. And so, have you seen where the practice of dividing people based on being white or not white has discontinued ever since that practice started, sir?
To be honest with you, I have not experienced it personally. Have you seen it discontinue, sir? I would say that I have. I've seen it probably discontinue in an institutional sense, in a large scale. Yes, I would imagine that individuals still do it to a far lesser degree. I would say that that there are organizations. There are organizations that exist out there that, in my opinion, have almost literally zero power, that want to do it but don't have the capability to do it. And there's a large mass of people in the middle that need direction, most of which don't care about skin color. Now, like I said before, I think we tend to help perpetuate that model, or help perpetuate the understanding that might exist by some of the things that we do, which are divisive in nature. And that's why I mentioned NAACP, Al Sharpton, and Jesse Jackson, is because they tend to continue the idea that we are a divided nation, and help perpetuate that model. And I don't see that we are a divided nation. I have not experienced that, and I don't see that happening. And like I mentioned before, when I'm with people that are white, personally, I don't see it at all. And the question I was going to ask is has anybody been to a tea party? And if you haven't, I'd be more than happy to take you.
I'm in Washington State. If you said you're coming to Oregon, if you can make it to Washington State, I would love to go. I don't know if there's going to be one in Washington. Okay,
there's plenty of tea parties in there. I'll call them up. I'll see if they can put an event together for me, get a seminar in, and then we'll invite you. How's that?
I'm there.
Please, sir.
I'm there. And if you could get Mr. Marcus to attend, that would be fabulous. That would be cherry on top.
That would be great. He's a great man. He's a great man.
I hope maybe he'll listen to the program. He'll come hang out. He said he would come hang out when he told me to have you on the program. He said he would come and chat with us. So maybe we'll get that to happen. Did you have another question, Mighty Wick?
Oh no, thank you. When you put the tea party together, I'll be looking forward to attending as well, if that's all right with you, Frantz.
No, that'd be fantastic. Well, are you in Washington State also?
Yeah, I'm in the Pacific Northwest area.
Okay. Well, listen, I'll be more than happy. You get in touch with me. There's information there, I'm sure, on the blog talk there. Get in touch with me, and when I'm in the area, I will contact you. I'll bring you in. I'll show you around. I'll get to let you to meet the people and everything. Listen, there's a whole swath of history that has been taken out of our history books that is relevant to why we may think the way that we think, or why black people in our communities think the way that they think. And it's important to get that information out. Now, I know you looked at the website, so you probably saw a good majority of the things that are on there. But it's important that's the part of the awareness phase for us, for this organization, is to get that information out there. The story I love to tell, and I tell this obviously to mostly white people, is that and they don't even, most of them don't even know this, that Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, was also a Democrat. Most of them, don't even know that information. And I tell them the story of how he was imprisoned after the Civil War for 2 years. He lost his Senate seat. He was a senator from the state of Mississippi, and he was a Democrat. And in 1870, they replaced him in his seat with a gentleman by the name of Hiram Revels. He was the first Republican to sit in that seat from the state of Mississippi, and also he replaced the president of the Confederacy. But he was also the first black senator in U.S. history. And it's not anything that anybody talks about. Now, how can you gain pride in the people at that time, both black and white, who sent this man to replace the president of the Confederacy? How can you have pride if you don't even know the information? And it's not only that. We had people of color, 23 members of Congress go up between 1868, or I should say 1870, to 1901. And nobody knows who these people are. We don't talk about them. We don't teach them in school. It's not a sense of pride in our communities that Robert Elliott was the Speaker of the House in South Carolina before or after he was in Congress in the 1870s. And it's those kinds of things help us perpetuate, or not knowledge, the lack of knowledge of those kinds of things help perpetuate the model that we have always been victims. No. There have been times in our history when people have died to free black people, when people have helped to make sure that black people are seen equally in our society, but we have always combated the evil forces in our society, the ones that you talk about. I am just trying to figure out a different way to combat these people because they thrive on our division. They thrive on the division in our society between black and white. That's what makes them, that's what helps them exist. But those people of color that went to Congress in 1868 with John Willis Maynard as the first one, they didn't, and then you had Josiah Walls and Robert Elliott and just a slew of people that went up there. It wasn't as though they went up there on their own. It was because the society, the people, black and white, working together, sent those people to Congress. And the other thing that many people don't talk about is this. If you lived in the 1820s and 1830s, and it is a solidly slave country, by 1820, with the Missouri Compromise, we are a solidly slave country at this point. One for one, a free state and a slave state. It's perpetuating that institution. There is nobody at that time that would ever lay down a bet to say that a mostly white nation will fight each other for blacks to be free. You would never hear that uttered out of anybody's mouth. And yet, that is exactly what happened. We lost, the black population lost about 20,000 people in that war. Whites, 640,000, more than any other wars combined, 640,000. And at the end of that war, 3.9 million slaves were freed, 3.9 million. When I give my seminar, many people need to understand this. When I say 640,000, you must understand it in context. At the time that they lost 640,000, there were only 31 million people in the country. If you extrapolate those numbers out to our population today, if that war were fought today, 6.5 million people would die to free those slaves. And yet they did it. One other thing you have to remember is that the North was losing the war. The North was losing the war when Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election. Deaths were unsurmountable. I mean, it was unbelievable the amount of deaths that had happened in their society. They easily, and his opponent was George McClellan, who wanted to make sure that the South could keep their slaves. He wanted to have peace. He said, let's go back to the way it was, and let's not deal with this issue of slavery anymore. Just let them have what they want to have. And Abraham Lincoln in 1864 was reelected for the sole purpose of continuing the war and ending slavery. But we must give that credit. And we do not in our society. We do not give that credit in our society. And as I mentioned, one more thing. When we talk about and by the way, those soldiers that were of color that fought in that war knew exactly what they were fighting for. They were fighting for freedom, for the unity of America, because, as Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided cannot stand. Now, he specifically meant slaves in free state and slave states, half free, half slave. But he also meant that we must come together as a nation, or else we are going to be completely divided at all times. And that's what's happening today.
See,
when I say
I understand where that comes from.
I'm sorry, tipped the wrong. I'm sorry. My apologies.
No, I was going to say that 640,000. You know, those numbers are astounding. But at the same time, you must also remember that 640,000, they were men, women, and sometimes children. And they left legacies or empty legacies of their children, of their wives, of their brothers and sisters. And they knew full well halfway through the war what they were fighting for. And they continued the fight. They could have given up. They could have said, this is enough. I don't want to have anything to do with this. I don't know these black people. I don't know these slaves. I don't have any slaves. I don't care anymore. I'm leaving. I'm going to go home because it's time for me. I don't want to do this anymore. Abraham Lincoln got reelected, and they went on and fought the war and won it. And we don't give them credit.
Person who called in last 4 digits, 2658. 2658. Your line is open.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, sir. I came in probably halfway through the program, and was just listening to the gentleman. I believe his name is Mr. Frantz.
Yes, Frantz, yes.
Yes.
You don't need the Mr. It's okay.
Pardon?
I said you don't have to put the Mr. in. Just Frantz is fine.
Well, it's just a level of respect that anybody that I'm talking to is due.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
But I was just listening to the conversation, listening to your conversation. I could be wrong. I'll preface everything that I say that I could be wrong, but it sounds consistent with some observations I've had in my past. Generally, I would say that your direction of activity would make white people very comfortable and very acceptance of you into their programs. Based on my experiences, they make them very, very, very comfortable. Whatever consciousness of guilt that they may have, it may resolve it somewhat. I could be wrong, but nevertheless, I could be wrong about it. But I'd like to know, you mentioned you kind of like put out, which I think is probably not the kindest thing that you can do by putting out certain non-white people under the context of racism and white supremacy, putting their names out about what you don't like about them. But that's okay if that's what you think is correct. You're entitled to that, I think. But do you have any examples of white people who are encouraging divisiveness within the global environment?
Within the global environment, I could not answer that. That's not a purview that I'm looking at right now. I will say though,
and I'm not, sir. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
Okay. I will say though that from the context of my understanding of our society here in the United States of America, my view is that the Democrat Party itself continues this issue of dividing people based on their skin color, and I think it's a very necessary thing for them to do. I would, I don't have any proof of this, but I would not put it past either the administration, the Democrat Party, and the NAACP coming together to have this resolution come out to generate the conversation about racism once again where it did not exist. I'll tell you that if it did exist, and if it existed in any real sense, then it would be a story that you would see on a regular basis every single day. What you have from the NAACP are allegations, and that's it. If you guys, I want to ask you, and I would like to ask the host to go to the website called Tea Party Patriots and take a look in your own state how many Tea Parties groups exist just in your own state. And then take a look at that and multiply it out by the 50 states. And imagine how many rallies there have been since August 15th of last year with all of those Tea Parties. And if racism did actually exist and people were discriminated against or there were a level of disdain that was happening within those Tea Parties, you would immediately know it because just from the abundance of Tea Parties that exist in the United States of America. Go take a look at Tea Party Patriots, look at your state, and see how many Tea Party groups exist. When I went to the NAACP website, based on their resolution, they said go to our website and take a look at the signs. There were 25 signs. I counted them because I wanted to make sure what I was talking about. There were 25 signs. Out of the 25 signs, 23 of them were, in my opinion, maybe distasteful but not racist. Maybe distasteful but not racist. 2 of them, I would say, were racist in nature. 2 out of the 25, I would say. Now, we take 2 signs. This is the NAACP, and they're a very powerful organization all over the country. You take 2 signs out of the hundreds, probably millions of signs that have existed in Tea Party rallies, let alone there was 1.6 million people on the Capitol lawn last year in August, or I believe it was 9/12. 2 signs that they could come up with. Where I can probably go to any, leftist rally and find a myriad of signs at one of these rallies. If they wanted to find the information that the Tea Partiers are racist, and if they were actually racist, they could easily find that information. And the best that they could come up with was 2 signs in the last year and a half.
Very interesting. I will check the website out, and I'm in Washington State. I will be waiting for you to set up the rally here so I can go and participate myself. Person who called in, last 4 digits, 2595. 2595. Your line is open.
Hello. Hi.
Yes, we
can
can
hear me.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Renegade and Mr. Frantz. Mr. Frantz, I'm going to make this really quick as I can. I disagree with you on practically every point you made, brother. And it's important to me to make that point when so much misinformation is being put out on the air. Let me just hit a couple of points, and then you can say what you can respond. First of all, Abraham Lincoln did not believe in racial equality. I have a copy of one of the speeches he made in which he, in fact, stated that he has never, nor ever has been in favor of bringing about any social and political equality of the white and black races. I am not and never have been in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. So he would basically have a problem with you right now, brother.
Can I answer that? Can I answer that one really quickly?
And that's
quote. Yes, that is original. I believe I agree with you there. Mm-hmm. That is from, I believe, the first Lincoln-Douglas debates obviously in Illinois. That was his response to Frederick Douglass calling him a black Republican because they wanted equality for blacks, and that was his response to that. I will tell you that Abraham Lincoln was specific in his understanding that he absolutely abhorred slavery. He absolutely abhorred slavery. He was a man that was, if there was another step to go where he felt that blacks and whites could be equal, he had not made that step yet. But he absolutely abhorred the institution of slavery, and that's why he continued the war into success in 1865.
Well, it would take me too long to dispute that. I don't agree with you, but we'll move on to another point. The thing you mentioned earlier, too, about everyone can they work real hard, they can all make it up. Let me explain my position about capitalism. First of all, capitalism is a pyramid system. It requires slaves. It requires a great number of people on the bottom to allow a smaller number in the middle and a tiny number at the top. So it is not possible for everyone in the capitalist system to rise to the middle or the top. So what you're saying, is against the law of physics. It's against the law and a pyramid.
Listen, well, I agree with you. I completely agree with you as far as that particular model of capitalism. I agree with you. But capitalism, hold on. But capitalism also says that one person that's at the bottom can take himself out of the system and become his own top individual.
Only if someone takes his place. You can't have a pyramid with holes missing at the bottom.
Okay, I agree with you.
Up, somebody has to move down or stay down.
No. Listen. If you have somebody working in the mailroom and you have the CEO making $600,000 a year, that individual working in that mailroom can decide if he is not moving up fast enough in that organization, I'm going to go start my own organization. And that's where capitalism allows you to be your own boss. Socialism the government is in control of that, but capitalism allows you to extricate yourself out of a bad situation, decide to put yourself into a better situation.
Now, as an individual person, that can possibly happen with random individuals, but collectively, individuals cannot do it. The whole system is made up of a matrix that's already predetermined and designed by the white supremacists in power. This idea that you or me or any non-white can come along and eliminate a system based on racism is, to me, absurd. But let me just make another point. Let me just say this. Even because I want to get it in quick because, Okay, even white people know what you've been saying for the last hour is not true. They love to hear you say it because you let them off the hook. They also know that when black people work in support of white supremacy, as you are doing, you work to extend and strengthen white supremacy. So the reason the white people respond to you positively, my brother, is you are aiding and abetting the system of white supremacy and white privilege. And, of course, they're in favor of that. The last thing I wanted to say is, as far as this colorblind society, what really, really kills me is whenever I meet a black person, particularly a black male, who proposes this colorblind philosophy, somehow they always seem to find a white female. So I just find it really strange that a colorblind black male always somehow seems to, he can't see colors, but he can spot that white female a mile away. And what I'm saying to you is, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, is what you're doing, in my opinion, it's only my opinion, but I stand on it, and that is what you're doing is a crime against the whole non-white world by trying to propose this nonsense. And I'm going to be politically incorrect because everybody else is right, but I'm not going to waste my time with that because this problem is too serious and for somebody like me not to call you on the carpet for it. You don't have to agree with me, but what I'm saying is that these people that you mentioned, these Al Sharptons, these Democrats and Republicans, all this is just plain rhetoric because the same people control the Democrats that control the Republicans. The NAACP and Al Sharpton is funded by the same people that control the Democrats and Republicans. All they've done is get people to go through these little dog and pony shows to pretend that there's a difference. My question to you is, who is funding your organization?
As a matter of fact, nobody. And if you want to donate, you'd be more than happy to take some.
Absolutely not.
But listen.
But you can't answer this one question, though. Why is it that so many colorblind black males seem to only find white females?
Well, maybe because they're not white.
What?
Maybe because they're not white.
Who's
you see, you're looking at a prism based on a racial prism. I don't. My glasses aren't racially charged. But let me just say this.
You're not legally blind, are you? You're not legally blind, are you?
No,
the only way you cannot see color is if you're legally blind.
Let me ask you this now quickly. Okay. Let me ask you this. I want to know if you agree with this quote or not. Let me know if you agree with this quote or not. The quote is, let me just start this. We have learned in the course of this freedom struggle that the needs of 20 million Negroes are not truly separable from the needs of the 200 million whites and Negroes, all of whom would benefit from a colorblind land of plenty.
Okay. Who said that?
Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay, and your point is what?
That is what I gained my strength from the knowledge that somebody infinitely smarter than me figured something else out that other people have not gotten. And so that's what drives me.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, excuse me, be impolite, but one thing Martin Luther King never did, he never pretended that racism was not what it was. He never blamed the victims for the crimes of white racism. So the one thing, there is a big difference between what you're saying and Martin Luther King. He put his life on the line. He didn't appease white people. He actually angered white people. White people hated him until he was dead. So my point is the difference between you and saying what you're saying and Martin Luther King, what he said, is 10,000 miles apart. He never. White people were totally opposed to Martin Luther King when he first.
I understand. Do you know why
they were opposed to you, though? They're not opposed to what you're saying.
Hold on. Do you know why they were opposed to Martin Luther King Jr. saying that he wanted a colorblind society?
Okay. Why would they oppose? Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because their strength remains in them being white, and their opposition must exist for them to continue their subjugation. The opposition being black. The more you fight this, the stronger they become.
No, the more you stay in denial, my brother, the stronger they become. The more we have these two camps of black people, I call them the advocates and the liberators. The liberators are the ones who face the reality of racism, who don't blame the victims of racism for racism, and who actually understand that if they're standing on the side where the majority of white people are standing, they're probably standing on the wrong side. Then you have the advocates, who are the appeasers, the ones who want to fit in with whites, the ones who are white identified, the ones who marry and breed with whites. And those are going to be the two camps that are going to have to go to war, because from what I can see, from what you've said, the white supremacists don't have to do any more work. They've got people like you working for them. So I'm just
my last question would be for you.
Okay.
As far as your vision of America in the future, what is next?
I'll make this real quick. My vision is that racism is not, for one reason, I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to say it. Barack Obama's election was mainly to create a black scapegoat for what is coming. And what is coming is a collapsed economy. What is coming is increased racism and repression. And black people, including you, are about to find out just how color conscious and color obsessed and racist this country is. That's the vision I see for America, is that black people are going to get a wake-up call. They're getting a wake-up call now.
No one is available to take your...
Okay, thank you.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
Okay, no, thank you for that.
Okay. Did you have a response, Mr. Kebreau?
No, that was it.
Okay. There was one other person who called. Did you have time for one last caller, or?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Person who called in 5594. Got you. If you have a question.
Okay. Is it logical? You were talking about President Lincoln and the presidents. Is it logical that the founding fathers were racist white supremacists?
You're asking me?
Yes, sir.
Were they racist white supremacists? You mean all the founding fathers, or you mean specific ones?
We can deal with Jefferson.
Okay.
And Lincoln, really.
Okay. Jefferson lived in the state of Virginia. He, from a very early age, at the age of 24, went to the Virginia Assembly to see, as a young man, whether or not he could release his slaves. And he was told that he was not allowed to release his slaves. In the society that he lived in, if he would let his slaves go, just decided, okay, you know what, I'm going to turn my back and you run away. In the society that he lived in, they would have gotten picked up and taken to who knows where and been subjugated by somebody else. So his decision was to continue to fight for ways to end slavery, both in Virginia and as a member of the founding fathers through the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, to end slavery large scale, wholesale, all across the United States of America. But in the state that he lived in, it was nearly impossible to do so. It was impossible to release his slaves because by, I believe it was 1803, it was illegal to the point that you were actually going to be thrown in jail for releasing your slaves. That's in the state of Virginia. Abraham Lincoln himself did not have any slaves, but he married into a slave-owning family. He himself hated slavery and abhorred slavery, but he did not start the Civil War because of slavery. That's a misconception. Many people think that he did start the Civil War because of slavery. He did not start the Civil War because of slavery. He started, and people ask me, well, what do you mean he didn't start the Civil War because of slavery? I said, listen. Let me explain it to you.
Hold on. Can I say one thing?
Sure, go ahead.
My question dealing with Thomas and dealing with Lincoln. My question is it logical that the United States President Thomas Jefferson and Lincoln were white supremacists?
Is it logical that they could have been or that they were?
That they were.
Either way, I would say no, because I understand their histories. I know their and what they've done and what they've said and what they've written. So the answer would be no.
So what the last caller read about the statement she read that that Thomas Jefferson.
No, that was Lincoln. No, she was specifically talking about Abraham Lincoln, and those were the Lincoln-Douglas debates, where Stephen Douglas had accused Abraham Lincoln of being for the citizenship of the Negro and also for the an anti-slavery individual, because the Republican Party started in 1854 as the anti-slavery party, and he was a Republican. So his response to that in his debate to Stephen Douglas was that he was not for the equality for the black man. Now, the reason he was not for the equality of the black man has nothing to do with whether or not he liked or disliked slavery. He was an individual who disliked slavery, but you have to understand that at his time, 40 years had passed since it was against the law.
You talking about Lincoln?
Yes, I'm talking about Lincoln.
So would that still make him? Would that not make him a white supremacist?
Let me finish. Yeah, and I'll tell you. I'll finish my point. 40 years had passed since, in the 1820s, after the Nat Turner Rebellion, it became illegal, and the punishment of which was death if you were to educate your slaves. 40 years had passed. When Abraham Lincoln says that he is not for the equality of the black man, there's two things that he's talking about. The first thing he's talking about is they're not even part of the society yet to be able to vote on things, for the most part, in his opinion at that time. The second thing is that he was for sending slaves back to Africa. That's what he proposed. He wanted the slaves to be sent back to Africa. And people ask me, why would he want that? And he says his opinion was, why would the slaves after 200 years of bondage want to stay in the United States? Why would they want to stay here and work with the same people that had kept them in bondage? So he made the conclusion that, listen, I'm not for them being here. They can go back to Africa because I suspect that's probably what they're going to want to do once they're free. Do you understand?
I think could you define what a white supremacist is? I think I'm confused on your
on what? On what that?
On white supremacy. Dude, I mean because Lincoln disliking somebody off of race. I mean, Lincoln said that the black race is inferior. I mean, that would put him in the class of any white supremacist today. So what is your definition on white supremacy or supremacist?
Now we're talking about slavery versus white supremacy, right?
So that's okay. So you said
that's the difference that we're talking about. And obviously, white supremacy during the slavery times would have been somebody white owning somebody black. That is not what Lincoln was in favor of.
So My definition for white supremacy is a global system or local system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating anyone in the known universe who they classify as non-white.
I agree with you. I agree with that definition. Now, please, I would like for you to correlate that definition with the loss from the North of 350,000 plus lives to end that practice of slavery. Why would a white supremacist with that definition decide to go to war and lose their life over it if they were a white supremacist?
I would think.
Let me tell you. Let me share something with you that is not shared. It's you can go to the Library of Congress and check it out, but it's not shared anywhere else. At the end of the Civil War, in 1865, the 13th Amendment was passed and ratified later that year in December. Abraham Lincoln saw the passage of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in the United States of America forever. And the vote count for the abolishment of slavery, and if we're talking about white supremacists, for the vote count for the abolishment of slavery was 100% Republican support, and only 23% of the Democrats supported it. Soon after that, in 1868, the 14th Amendment was passed, and it made sure that it ensured that if you were here in the States and you were irrespective of your former station in life, whether you were slave or free, that even if you were black, you could be a citizen of the United States, which was a reversal from the Dred Scott decision in 1857. And the vote count for that was 100% Republican support, and not one Democrat, North or South, voted for the 14th Amendment. And in 1870, the 15th Amendment, where there were three in succession, the 15th Amendment ensured that if you were a newly freed citizen of the United States, and it didn't matter your past station in life, that you were a citizen, and we would ensure that you would have the right to vote, And in 1870, once again, that vote count was 100% Republican support and not one Democrat, 0% voted for that. Now we're talking about white supremacy. Is there any reason why a white supremacist would want to abolish slavery, apply those newly slave slaves to be citizens, and then give them the right to make sure that they have the right to vote as other citizens of the United States?
I would hop in to respond to that question to say that if the white people in what you call the North, if they were really opposed to racism, white supremacy, most likely there would have never been an NAACP, an Al Sharpton, a Jesse Jackson. I suspect we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if you really had that many white people who were really dedicated to eradicating the system of white supremacy. I suspect you had white people. Wait a minute, let me finish my response. I suspect you had white people arguing and ended up arguing violently over how they were going to practice racism, white supremacy. But I could be incorrect. If you want to have the last word with your response, go ahead.
Sure. Then let me give you the last one, which is a big deal for me, is the Civil Rights Act of 1875. And if many people don't know anything about this Civil Rights Act, but the Civil Rights Act of 1875 was the first anti-discrimination law to spread across the United States of America. It was specifically an anti-discrimination law. And the 1964 Civil Rights Act fed off of that 1875 Civil Rights Act in 1875. And what a country we would be today if that Civil Rights Act over 150 years ago was let to stand, or 135 years ago. The problem was that in 1876, Democrats took control of Congress, stacked the Supreme Court, and in 1883 repealed the Anti-Discrimination Law, Civil Rights Act of 1875. And Republicans, I will tell you this, Republicans, they haven't necessarily been the best, but they've been fighting Democrats this entire time to make equality for everybody in society. And most people don't know this. All of the anti-lynching bills were introduced by Republicans at the opposition of Democrats. The Civil Rights Act of 1957, 1960, and 1964 were all filibustered by Democrats and passed with majority numbers, percentages, by Republicans. And even the 1964 Civil Rights Act, when it passed, it had 80% Republican support and just over 60% Democrat support. And these are numbers that nobody will ever share with you because they need us to have a particular mindset. There have been both black and white people working to end slavery and for equality for this nation for the longest time. But we are not supposed to know that those people exist, and that's why we have this racial animal.
It sounded like you got cut off. You said that's why we have this racial animosity. Was that the end of it, or did you say something else?
No, that was the end.
Oh, okay. Thought you got cut off. Okay. Wow. Did you feel like your head got chopped off at any point during the program?
No. And I'm a Navy pilot. I'm pretty thick-skinned, so nothing bothers me. I'm getting some regular hate mail now, but it's quite all right because I believe in my mission 100%, and I feel like I'm on the right track, so it doesn't bother me at all.
Okay, groovy. I hope, Mr. Lloyd Marcus, I hope you heard the program. I don't think, or at least I can speak for myself, I don't think I was rude or ugly in any way in my treatment during the program, even though we didn't agree, which I expected, but I definitely enjoyed the dialogue. A lot of people called in, so I suspect listeners enjoyed it as well. I will look for that contact. I have your contact information. I will be in touch about the Tea Party in this area because I definitely want to participate. I'm definitely going to hold you to the fire on that one. If you can organize it. And Seattle, I'm in Seattle specifically, Seattle, Washington. So if you can get something in this area, I want to be there front and center, hear all the speakers. I want Mr. Marcus to be there. I want to get the full shebang. If you can set it up, I'm there.
All right. That sounds great. And thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
We appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your time with us, sir.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Mr. Frantz Kebreau, National Director of the National Association for the Advancement of Conservative People of All Colors. Everybody that called in, you're on the line. I'm going to support Sister Nefertari really quick, and we'll be right back. Context of white supremacy.
The second annual Nat Turner Day Weekend Celebration 2010, The Resurrection of Haiti, Friday, August 20th to Sunday, August 22nd, at the Church of the Advocate, 1801 West Diamond Street, Philadelphia, PA, sponsored by the Children of Southampton, featuring Umar Abdullah Johnson, the Irritated Genie of Southeast, Sister Nefertari, Mary Moot Nzinga, the Universal African Dance and Drum Ensemble, the Lest We Forget Black Holocaust Slave Museum, and a special feature, the Nat Turner Day African Insurrection Musical with Brothers Keeper, the African Marketplace, and much, much more. The cost for the entire weekend, $50 for black adults, $25 for black students and children under 12, and $25 for black elders 65 and older. For more information, contact the Children of Southampton at www.ourcause.com. That's www.ourkos.com or 888-817-3235. That's toll free at 888-817-3235.
Context of white supremacy. Very interesting broadcast. Very interesting broadcast. The homework assignment for this program is to count the cowbells. Count the cowbells, and make sure you pay close attention to the portion of the program where he talked about his white wife. They have 4 children, I believe, if the information on the blog is correct. But count the cowbells. Everybody that called in, your line is open. I'm working to see if I can get one other gentleman who was listening, if I can get him on my line. But everybody who called in, your line is open.
Gus, can you hear me?
I heard someone. I don't know who that was exactly.
2658.
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Might have broke a record with cowbells.
Yeah.
As I mentioned when I conversed with the gentleman, that I've heard that particular type of dialogue before, and as I mentioned before, I could be wrong, but it from my experiences, I've thought it to be very appeasing with white people. So it's not new to me. I'm sure it's not new to most of your listeners. At the same time, especially if they worked in a they cohabit in a working environment. Also, I would have liked to ask him more questions to maybe someone who was just listening, could have been educated more to the type of political understanding the gentleman has. For instance, he keeps mentioning about slavery and the different laws that took place over the years. My question would be, well, could you give us a understanding on why the system of racist white supremacy still exists? I worked on a job myself for 27 years as a firefighter, and I have witnessed white people who would be saving a non-white black person's life 1 minute, and 30 minutes later practice racism, white supremacy. It's nothing new. I have heard and read stories about white people who have literally lost their lives in the cause of duty. And the call of duty is what they call in the military itself. But that doesn't mean that they were doing it on behalf of black people. It may be a black individual that they've been doing it to, but still racism, white supremacy still exists. So some of the things he says is may not be as accurate as I think they are. On that line. He did say he didn't think there was a system of white supremacy. That was I asked him that at the very beginning of the program, and he said no such system. I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised he said that. Well, that makes it clearer to me on where he's coming from. And I've learned a lot also on patience. I've heard you. I've been listening to your program for almost since you started, and I've witnessed how patient you are when you are conversing with people who I figured that is not on the same level of understanding or same page of understanding but you're very courteous and very patient with them, and I'm learning that also. So I didn't think it was my place to bang him over the head, whatever his thoughts are. When it comes down to it, because it was what would it amount to, if we spend our time fighting and arguing with one another, there's either a choice on whether you will be working for or against the system of racist white supremacy. I think we will be working for the system of racist white supremacy. We spend too much of our time, spend our time at all arguing against one another because one doesn't think the same way that we do. I think we'll be working for the system of racism white supremacy if we do that. So that has taught me a lot to although something may be totally different from my thought pattern and whatnot, nevertheless I still view that non-white person as a victim and they're entitled to their opinion, as far as they're concerned, and it would be my place to keep my focus on the proprietor of racism, white supremacy, which is white people. Keep my focus.
Here.
And I've learned that. I've learned that primarily one of the big reasons by listening to your program, because you have brought on a variety of people. Automatically, our ears go over here, a white person, that has different viewpoints, and now when that comes up, then all bets what I've just said may be off. As far as that's concerned, it may be off. Although I still would try to take a place of courtesy, but it may not always come out that way sometimes. But with a non-white black person, especially, that's where the majority of my patience is going to be. Majority of my patience is going to be there, because to think that the system of racism and white supremacy doesn't develop the big differences in opinions and whatnot would be crazy. Not to think that it actually creates that in itself, because one of the main attributes that I've learned that it executes on non-white people to be successful is deception, and through the weapon of deception, it causes a confusing effect on non-white people. And I think I understand that to be true. So when I hear another non-white person that says something that's kind of like would sound, totally different than what I would put it, I discipline myself to just listen. Just listen, and maybe if I have something to say, I'll say it in the term of a question.
Minimizing conflict, very important skill for attempted counter races. That's an excellent skill.
Lesson into counter racism. Anytime someone similar to the gentleman comes and I hear it, it's an excellent lesson for I would say not just myself, but anybody who's listening. Anybody who's listening is an excellent lesson. I mean, if
I did.
Excuse me, sir. Go ahead.
Oh no, I just wanted to throw out really quick. Gentleman from Vienna. I don't want to say people's names because I know African 1884. You're on if you want to chat as well. And I did want to throw out, and I'll be quiet. When I did the Saturday broadcast, I said I think white people have almost perfected the system of white supremacy with regards to confusing non-white people. And when I say perfected, I mean they've almost got it to the point where you can't undo the confusion that they have wreaked on their non-white victims of white supremacy. I might submit this as Exhibit A. I don't know if I'm just not sure you could do a whole lot with that to get him to understand. Yes, we are in a system of white supremacy, and exactly I think what several of the callers said. The reason that so many white people are receptive to what you have to say is that they're most likely racist, and what you're saying supports their system of injustice. I don't know if there's anything you could do that would get him to understand that, to change his view. That's what I mean about perfected. That's what I mean about it. It's in my view, it's just too hard to try and take somebody from that to, system of white supremacy, and I shouldn't be having sex with white people. I could be wrong. I'll hush. Feel free.
Can you hear me?
I agree, Gus.
Yes, I believe, yes, gentlemen. I don't know how you want to be referenced. African 1884, yes, I can hear you.
Yes, okay, I'll go by the name African 1884. And one thing that I found interesting in today's broadcast was that I think the guest was not very clear in understanding what you meant when you said racism, white supremacy. And I think he understands racism, white supremacy as a system that's set up to divide black people and white people from each other, whereas it's more like a system that's been designed to take in everything that non-white people do and not exclude them, but take them in. I think that's very important, and most black people see it in that kind of way, that racism, white supremacy is about division and not more about taking in all the business of non-white people on the universe. And I think your guest was not clear on that.
Hey, I got the idea that by racism, white supremacy, he was thinking that it was slavery. Like
exactly.
He
if there's no slavery,
he did use the term. He did use slavery a lot. He referenced slavery a lot.
Right. I think I kind of got like maybe he was trying to say that racism, white supremacy was just slavery, but. And when he kept saying, Gus asked him about getting together, for some reason I just felt like he was talking about white, whatever. Yeah, Gus already put it out there. So
where I see it's an excellent study at, is that there's a lot of non-white people who think that slavery is the basis of racism, whereas in my analogy, racism and white supremacy is the tree, and slavery at one time was one of the branches on the tree. And just like a branch breaks off of a tree, the tree produces another branch. But I think a lot of non-white people are confused in thinking that slavery itself is a tree. So therefore, when they say, well, that doesn't happen, that's gone. They have this perception that the system of race, that racism, in their view, has dissipated or is dissipating, based on slavery as being something, 200 years ago, 150 years ago or so, which is from that reaction of being confused. The tree is the racism, white supremacy itself.
Yeah, and it's tacky, man, but a little bit that even if somebody didn't agree with the NAACP, didn't have anything really, to do with that organization, if you wanted to do something, why would you be so hostile, to use their logo or their name, and just, it seems like, why wouldn't you just do your own thing? If they're doing something that you don't agree with or whatever, why don't you just fill the void and be about your business? I
see myself. This is 2658. I see myself when white people, when non-white people normally come out and attack someone, is normally another non-white person, or maybe something non-white people are involved in because of the lack of consequences, for one thing. Calling out other non-white people, even harming other non-white people because of the lack of consequences towards it. There is a consequence when you attack white people under the system of racism, white supremacy. It's not a matter of if you're going to be facing the consequences. It's just a matter of when they get tired of hearing you, when they get tired of your activity. And that I think is a reality. I've seen it myself time and time again, as far as that's concerned. And as I mentioned to him, I can see on how he gets a lot of appeasing from white people with his antagonistic behavior towards non-white people. Calling out other non-white people and focusing on, okay, well, they are the problem. Of course, he'll get invited all over the place.
And it's really easy to do.
By right. But at the same time, if he turns it around another direction, there also is a consequence. There's a consequence towards that. There's a consequence, and something tells me that he may know that. I could be wrong, but I think he knows that as a non-white person. Even those who think totally different from the rest of us, that's on this phone right now. That they know within their conscious or subconscious that there are consequences. Because you don't see it on a daily basis, where some non-white person is antagonizing white people openly, on a daily basis. You don't just see it at all. We don't challenge white people. We don't challenge white people.
I wanted to ask.
Could I say something?
You talking about myself?
No, myself. Could I say something? 1884, African 1884. I want to say something.
Oh, okay.
And that's in regard to also the way the guest was looking at racism and white supremacy as two different things, and that usually happens among many non-white people. They don't see that racism is white supremacy and white supremacy is racism. They look at them as two different things, and they tend to speak about the KKK and the white supremacists. But they don't look at the whole. They don't look at the whole thing as a system. In that as a non-white person, if you're within that system, anyone that's classified as white and is in a position to practice racism, white supremacy, should be held as a suspect. Most non-white people don't feel comfortable about that. And I think was at most times speaking about the white supremacists and the KKK, and I think he views these two particular groups, the white supremacists, quote unquote, maybe white people who wear swastikas, as a problem, and not maybe the average white person that you would meet in the store that directly and indirectly supports the system of racism and white supremacy. That's all I have to say.
Right. I think you're correct. I think you're correct in your analysis. I've had those same similar analysis that the two are separated by most non-white people. I've seen on several websites where the question comes up: Do you think that there are more racist white people other than the ones that wear the swastikas that have the cone headpieces with the gowns on? Are there more racist white supremacists than just that particular example? The question comes up. I've seen it on several websites. Most of us only view racism on a small, limited level, and which contributes towards a lack of focus, and in turn, what gives a lot of room for us to do what I think is the wrong thing and focus on each other, and that focus primarily is going to be negative. It's primarily going to be negative, and like I heard Dr. Wilson say, you have to give the racists an A+ for that manipulation. Give them an A+ for that. But at the same time, I've learned over the years, by developing an understanding of the total system of racist white supremacy, it also opens up the real possibilities on how, number one, it can be dismantled, taken apart, and replaced at the same time. To whereas there used to be a time in my life that I I didn't think that could happen. But the older and more understanding, more unconfused that I get, the more I see the reality that it can be countered. It can be countered. And so I keep that focus. It's an exercise of discipline to do it. It is very tempting. We've been manipulated in that way. It's very tempting to act on another non-white person. Very tempting to do it. But we have to be able to I guess, do exercises, psychological exercises to keep our focus on which I think is the direction it should be on the white people in general, especially those white people who practice the system of racism, and I can't tell which ones are the racism and can't. So all of them are suspects. Keep my focus in that direction. It's going to provide the most constructive direction, I think.
Well, it's interesting.
Interesting thing.
What I was going to say, you said it. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like I'm fascinated. It's fascinating. Gus said it. It's basically you seeing the result. The NAACP is a result of racism, white supremacy. Exactly. So you see all these different results of the system. So I mean, that to me is fascinating to see how one is going to react to the system. So you have your counter racists, and then you have your defenders of the system, basically. So I mean, I think that if you look at it like that, as like Dr. Wilson always says, it's fascinating, and it is fascinating. So, and he was talking about expectations. The reason why I was going to ask him, because Quincy Jones made a statement that one of his counter-racist things was to get him a white woman. That was his strategy. Basically, he said, he purposely set out to get him a white woman. So I know when he was talking about expectations, I was going to ask him because he accomplished. He was the only, one of the pilots and this and that, and he said because of his expectations. So I guess he was saying black people have it. We have low expectations. That's the reason why we aren't. There are more pilots and whatnot. But I was going to ask.
You probably are correct on what he was thinking. Yes. Correct. But you
I wonder was.
Take that.
Oh no! I wonder. I wish I could have asked him. Was his white wife? I wonder was that a strategy or not? Like, did he feel like? Because he kept saying. Get together. I wonder if that was purposely done, as far as his views. I wonder if did he purposely, tactically, want to get him a white wife, Because like I said, Quincy Jones said that he did. I wonder if that's how people are thinking. Like, it's too easy to marry black. I need to get me if I really want to do some damage, I need to get me a white female.
Or it may be thinking it's too difficult to marry black. And it's easier. It's easier under the conditions to be with a white person. Some people think in that manner. At least I've heard them think in that manner. It's easy for us to complain about each other. As far as that concerned. But everything that I've heard him say is consistent with my personal experiences. I've heard that particular mindset. countless numbers of times.
I'm sorry, I was just reminded of Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. referencing me as a segregationist when he was on the program the first time in May of 2009. He did it several times, actually, said that I was a segregationist. That might not be relevant. I don't know. 1884, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, it was also in regard to what I think we should try and get into the practice where we listen to what non-white people say and what white people say in regard to the terms that they use. Yeah. So, for example, the guest he wants to promote a society that's going to be colorblind, and I would conclude that he is more for what you call, quote unquote, racial unity and not for racial division. And in fact, those two terms, I mean, racial division, racial unity, as terms, they're just contradictory, you know. But many non-white people use them, and there are many conferences, like on this side of the world, here in Europe, where people tend to meet to discuss racial equality, racial unity, you know. And for me, I tend to look at these terms as terms that are really promoted very much by the racist white suspects, just to carry out the confusion among the non-white people, you know, because how can you unify races when the whole concept of race and racism is based on a mistreatment of people on the basis of color or race? You know, that's what I wanted just to put out.
I was going to ask him if he was, had he ever been or is currently, but Gus already had, you know, basically brought it out that he was married to a white female. I wonder if, I mean, this might sound, but I wonder if you want to marry a white female, that you would have to build this whole elaborate political ideology, and it's basically to get that white woman. So that, like, to get her into, you know, you have to build up this scenario of, you know, fight the NAACP and, you know, colorblindness. Let's get race off the, you know, off the census or whatever, or off the job applications. I mean, just to get a white woman. I mean, do you think that that's possible? That somebody could be somebody motivated by that would have to have this build up this world for themselves?
Yes. Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. Wait a minute. Let me get I still got my switchboard in effect. Let me see. Yes.
And it may be, and I'm not unwilling to critically look at this, it may be just a personal desire on my part to find a, you know, kind of soothing lotion so it doesn't feel so painful what it is that you're saying. So I'm not unwilling to look at that.
Yes. That's a big part of it. That's sad. I was going to plug my blog anyway. Sad. Go look at the sad blog post, racism-notes.blogspot.com. Interracial relationships are sad. Yes, I think going that route to get that white sex partner, you got to build up a whole fantasy world about how things are in a system of white supremacy. If you're going to be sexing a white person, you're going to have to do a lot of lying to yourself to maintain that relationship. I mean, we are talking big-time illusions about how the world works.
Better not challenge it.
This is Craig caller from the Midwest. That may be true. I was looking at a video earlier, and he was saying that he was a Democrat at first, and so he might have changed just to kind of blend into this whiteness or whatever with his white wife.
Yeah, well, it may be possible, but it may be a situation whereas a certain type of white person because Democratic Party, Republican Party. They're just branches on the same tree. And I mean, the bottom line is that one of the key ingredients in having sex with a white person is you don't challenge it. You don't challenge that white person under the context of racism, white supremacy. If you don't do that, then you keep the doors open of having that sexual relationship on a continuous basis. And because other than that, you're gonna have trouble. You're gonna have trouble with that white person by challenging that white person. I could be wrong, but I've never went that far with a white person. But as far as what I think makes sense is if you challenge that white person under the context of racism and white supremacy, then you're probably not going to develop a long-standing sexual relationship with that white person. In other words, are you a racist? Have you ever practiced racism? You know, so on and so forth. You know, come up with questions and challenge them on it.
Gus, did you hear Cree and Mr. Nero? That any of that show?
No, sir.
It's if you get a chance to listen to some of it, it's very interesting, And the reason why I bring it up is because it basically, when you say, have you ever been or are you currently in a sexual relationship with a white person, I know why you say, I know why the have you ever been. I know why that. At first, I didn't realize why would that have to be an issue. I mean, if it's over and done with, but very valid question. And if you listen to that show, it's fascinating for that reason, I think.
Interesting. I will have to check that out. I know both of them. I'm not gossiping because they both said it on the air, so I know both of them have admitted to some bedroom integration in their past. So that is very interesting. And it is relevant, I think. I definitely think that's important. Are you now? Have you ever been? Say it just like that. Very relevant. I'm going to make sure I don't get cut off, too, because we have 8 minutes left. We'll be back on Thursday. The schedule is wrong. Mr. Pietrus will be here on Friday, the 30th. Aisha Sekhmet will be here the 29th. So we'll be back on Thursday. Aisha Sekhmet Part 2. Parental advisory already in effect. I'm going to let her do her thing. So if profanity and 4-letter words bother you, you might want to skip the Thursday broadcast with Aisha Sekhmet, but should be a hoot. She is not confused. And we'll be talking about this subject matter with her on Thursday, but 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, and Thursday, Aisha Sekhmet Part 2.
Sir, would you mind going into just a little bit more, I guess, detail of why you felt that was in? I haven't heard the show either, but I don't know if I get a chance to catch it soon or not. But you mind giving me a little more detail as to why you felt like that was important for that broadcast?
Did you ask me? Because I had to put the phone down. You were asking me?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever been in a sexual relationship with a white person? Why that component was a part of this? I don't want to speak too much on it. I would have just emailed Gus to let him know that I felt. I mean, I'm recommending it, and it's not something that I would do. But if you keep that in mind and you listen to this show, I mean, you believe me, you will you won't be disappointed. That's all I will say about it. You will not be and that's the first time I ever listened to this show, and I called in on that show. So it was like the first time I ever listened and called in, and it was
I'm sorry. That was found that amusing, very amusing. I'll wait a minute. Just in general, I found that very amusing. And they both called here. I'm not I would be snickering if they were both here. I would still be snickering. Both of them, they're both investors. So, whatever. I'd be snickering. Shout out to Mr. Nero and shout out to Counter-Racist Evolving Engineer, her blog, Cree7.wordpress.com. Check her program out right here. It's linked on the show page. Both investors of the cows.
Sorry, sir, I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what time will that be in Europe when you're going to have the broadcast on Friday?
Good Lord. Aisha Sekhmet, that program will be, you're 9 hours ahead of me, so that program will be 1 a.m. Friday morning for you. That'll be the next time we broadcast. And the Friday program will be, the Friday broadcast is at 2 p.m. Pacific, so for you that will be 11 p.m. Friday night.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir.
No problem. Actually, for anybody, if you're listening outside the country, if you go to Blog Talk Radio, the white people are so cool. The time should adjust for your particular region. It should. It should give you the accurate time for your area. But, yeah, if it doesn't, you got the next two programs. If you're in Austria time zone, 1 a.m. Friday morning and 11 p.m. Friday night.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay. You're in Vienna?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
The heart of whiteness. Doesn't get any whiter than here. It doesn't get any whiter. I keep telling people that you want to know white society, I mean, the whole system is a global system, but you want to really know how most white people really interact with black folk. You just come to the heart of Europe, You come to Vienna, you go to Russia, you go to, Holland and stuff, You see all that, I'm surprised that the guest was talking about how Sweden, how good, I think it's from Sweden, his lady's from Sweden or something, saying how different it is there for him and he doesn't experience any form of racism, white supremacy. Maybe because he had a different understanding of what it is exactly. And it's also quite interesting how you have people like James Baldwin and Nina Simone who felt that in Europe they were very much accepted than it was in America. That's also something that's very, very interesting to look at and stuff.
I hope you call in again and just talk about a little bit more of that being out there.
Yes, sir.